Hello again, gamers. Welcome back for another episode of Grokking Battletech. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be telling you how to grok the Goliath. So before I get started, I do want to give a big thank you to a couple of my viewers. Big thank you to Luke Dudley and Heinrich Mueller, who requested that I cover an episode of the Goliath in my series of Grokking Battletech. Now, I had just had the Goliath in a lance when I did my episode on the Scorpion, and I guess just like me, they both had a little bit of quad fever because I was having a bit of quad fever myself covering the Scorpion, so I'm all too happy to cover the Goliath. So Luke Dudley and Heinrich Mueller, this episode is for you. Now, before I get too deep into this, I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. There's also a link to my Teespring store, where you can get yourself some cool Board Game Captain merch, t-shirts, mugs, etc. And there is a link to my Patreon if you're in a position to and would like to support the channel. All right, so the Goliath. The Goliath is one of the oldest quad mechs, back when a quad mech was just a bit of a novelty before they started getting more deep into the designs. The original quad mech, I believe, is one of the original two quad mechs where I believe the Goliath and the Scorpion. So this was the first assault quad mech coming in at 80 tons. And I've heard a lot of people say negative things about the Goliath. I've heard a lot of people say that they're not a fan of it. And I think that's generally because the original version is kind of lackluster. And I get that, but there are some really great later versions. I do feel like the Goliath thoroughly redeemed itself with later variants that came out in later books. So we're going to talk about all the different versions of the Goliath. I'm going to discuss what parts of being a quad mech the Goliath is good for taking advantage of. And then also, I'm going to tell you a redesign that I would do for the Goliath, as well as a recommended Mech Warrior card and a recommended lance for my favorite cannon version of the Goliath. So let's get into it. So first, let's talk a little bit about quad mechs and what makes them different. Now, we talked a lot about this in the Scorpion episode. I'm gonna go over it again, though. Quad mechs, some of the main differences are that quad mechs get a -2 to piloting skill rolls to stay standing as long as all their legs are fully intact. So that is really big, really helps for mechs that want to run fast and make tight turns for their piloting skill rolls. That's not the Goliath. It's not that fast. Also really helps for mechs that want to take a hit and stay standing. This might work for the Goliath. And also for mechs that carry heavy Gauss rifles, which this will work for one of the versions of the Goliath we're going to talk about in a minute, because spoiler alert, there is a version with a heavy Gauss rifle. In addition, mechs that are quads are able to move kind of sideways easier without having to turn. They can move sideways. They are not able to torso twist, but instead, in certain circumstances, it makes them a little bit more maneuverable, though not as maneuverable as a mech with jump jets, because they count all 3 rear hexes, including the 2 to the sides, as being behind them. So when walking, it just costs 1 movement point to move into any of those. And for the 2 side front hexes, they can use 2 movement points to move into either one of those, whether they are walking or running. So they're a little bit more maneuverable than biped mechs without jumping capability. Okay, so now let's talk about the Goliath. So the basic version of the Goliath is the GOL-1H. Now the GOL-1H is an 80-ton Star League era mech. It is one of the earliest quad mechs. It has a walking speed of 4, running speed of 6. This makes it fairly quick for an assault mech. Not quick, but quick for an assault mech. So, all right, so that's interesting. Then we can talk about the armor. The armor's not bad. There's definitely a lot better in the assault mech category in the Star League era, but it's got 20 on each side torso, 30 on the center torso, which is real nice, the full 9 on the head, 24 on each front leg, and 30 on each rear leg. In the rear, it has 13 on each side torso, and 19 on the center torso. This is actually not bad for rear armor for a mech that would want to get in close and mix it up. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a huge amount of firepower. The firepower on the basic version of the Goliath, and this is where it's most lackluster, is just it has a PPC, 2 LRM-10s, and 2 machine guns. This is not good. It does have 17 heat sinks, which means that generally speaking, it can fire all of this all day long, but it's not a lot of firepower. I mean, the PPC is not bad. That's a fairly good weapon, but it's only one of them. You have other 80-ton mechs in this era that have 3 PPCs, like the Awesome, which is another 80-ton mech that is roughly the same era. Yeah, the 1 PPC and the 2 LRM-10s is kind of lackluster. And the machine guns, 2 machine guns on a slow mech like this, really all these are for if you're playing combined arms and maybe taking out infantry that are trying to swarm it. But yeah, the really, in my opinion, the most redeeming factor of the basic version of the Goliath is how affordable it is. Its battle value is only 1,449, which for an 80-ton mech with a fairly decent amount of armor and a decent speed for an assault mech is pretty good. It's just that I actually would rather a lighter mech with more firepower, which there are some in this time period. So I'm not a huge fan of this version. It's not awful, but the basic version is why the Goliath, in my opinion, has a bad rep. So now let's get into some later versions. So the next version we're going to talk about is the GOL2H. Now this is a Civil War periphery version of the Goliath. So this version, you keep the 4.6 movement, which is pretty standard for the Goliath. They're all fairly quick. It's a 4.6 quad 80-ton mech is pretty standard across the board. Its armor is a little bit different. We've got 30 on the center torso, 20 on the 2 sides, the full 9 on the head, 28 on each front leg, and 30 on each rear leg, while having 13 on each side torso, and a huge 20 on the center rear torso, which is enormous. This is a significantly better armored version of the Goliath. It has 17 single heat sinks, though, which is a bit of a head scratcher for this time period. It does have a PPC and the 2 LRM-10s, but then instead of the machine guns, we have 6 rocket launcher 10s. This is an interesting mech. This is a mech where for one turn, when you get really good target modifiers and you can really light somebody up, you can unload with all those rocket launchers and just tear someone in half. Of course, you're probably, after that, going to overheat a bit because it only has 17 points of heat sinking capacity. And you're also going to be, knocked down to roughly the same firepower as the basic version of the Goliath after you unload with all those rocket launchers. But this is definitely interesting, and the better armor means I do like this version better. This is definitely an improvement. So the next version we're going to talk about is a Dark Age version. It is the GOL3L. This version of the Goliath has got some very, very nice armor. We've got 38 on the center torso, the full 9 on the head, 26 on each side torso, 34 on all 4 legs, which is huge. The rear, though, suffers a bit. We've got 12 on the center rear torso and 8 on each side torso, but that's because, generally speaking, not many of the Goliaths, at least the ones we've talked about so far, really meant to get in that close. This one is really dedicated to being a more long-range mech, so you're hoping things aren't going to get into your rear armor with this. Also, though, one of the interesting things about this version of the Goliath is they actually upped the speed on this one, making it even faster for an assault mech. It has a walking speed of 5 and a running speed of 8. This is actually quite interesting, increasing the size of the engine to increase the speed like that. The weapons, on the other hand, though, are iffy. So it's got a Guardian ECM suite, which is nice for defending it. It's also nice for defending other mechs near it because you make that bubble of, certain electronic warfare things like, Artemis 4s and enemy C3 networks and things like that are not going to function through that bubble of the Guardian ECM suite. So that is really cool. It does help your other mechs in the area. It has 1 medium pulse laser, 1 ER PPC, and 2 multi-missile launcher 7s. Now, I'm a big fan of the multi-missile launcher 7s. Also, we up our heat sinking capacity with 10 double heat sinks for a total of 20 heat sinking capacity, which is really nice. You can fire most of this armament, not all, but most of it without overheating. And the multi-missile launcher 7s are pretty awesome because while they're not as good as the LRM-10s at long range, at close range, firing off 7 short-range missiles is actually really deadly if something wants to get in close and try to mess with you. Still better than the base version. Love all the armor on the front of this thing. Love the improved speed. Makes this one actually far more maneuverable for running around and staying at your optimal distance, which is really your optimal distance is wanting to actually get into kind of medium range to fire the short range missiles out of the multi-missile launchers. But yeah, for the Dark Age, this is actually a pretty cool version. Still not my favorite though. The next version we're going to talk about is a Clan Invasion era version. We're going a little bit backwards here. This is the GOL-3M. So this one is fairly similar to the base version, but like a Clan Invasion upgrade, an update of that version. And this version is actually really great. I like this version a lot, especially because it is quite affordable for what it does. So this version, it's again, you got the 4.6 movement, it's a nice 80-ton quad mech. The armor is pretty decent. It's got 21 on each side torso, 30 on the center torso, 26 on each front leg, 31 on each rear leg, the full 9 on the head. The rear, we've got 19 in the center torso, 13 on each side torso, which again makes it very tough for someone who tries to jump in behind you. You actually can take a couple hits behind you and not have to worry. You've got 17 single heat sinks like the original version, but the big upgrade on this one is in the firepower. The firepower is much better on this version. So you've still got the 2 LRM-10s and the 2 machine guns, but for this version, we have traded the PPC for a Gauss rifle. And, Gauss rifles are great. 15 damage at incredible range. Yes, please. We were able to fit them in with an extra light fusion engine, which of course does make it a little bit more vulnerable. That is a bit of an issue. But the Gauss rifle is a very powerful weapon. The biggest downside with this version is ammo. We only have 1 ton of ammo for the Gauss rifle. That's 8 shots. Normal games, that's actually probably enough, believe it or not, but it is a bit of an issue. I would have liked 2 tons of ammo on the Gauss rifle. They could have dumped 1 of the tons of ammo from the machine guns, in my opinion. You didn't need 2 tons of ammo from the machine guns to get 2 tons of ammo for the Gauss rifle. I think that would have been much better. But you know what? For 1,537 battle value, which is a steal for a mech with a Gauss rifle and 2 LRM-10s, in my opinion, this is actually a very decent mech. Still not my favorite, but my favorite so far of the ones we've gone over. I actually quite like the GOL-3M. So the next version of the Goliath we're going to talk about is a Civil War era version. Again, 4.6 movement. This one has the GOL-3S has 29 armor on the center torso, 21 on the side torsos, full 9 on the head, 28 on each of the 4 legs, 7 on each side torso, 10 on the center rear. So we've reduced the armor on the rear torso a bit. Overall, similar to a lot of the basic versions of the Goliath. But this one has a much more interesting amount of firepower. We have, to start with, we've got a Lb20x Autocannon. Yeah, this thing comes with 2 tons of cluster ammo and 2 tons of solid shot ammo for its Lb20x Autocannon, which is absolutely deadly up close. Then it has 3 ER medium lasers. Once you hit with a solid shot, then you're doing the cluster shots and the ER medium lasers to find the holes. It has an ER large laser and an LRM-10 with an Artemis 4. Now, my only head scratcher on this one, because actually I really like this version a lot, my only head scratcher on this one is why they had to reduce the armor on the rear torso for a mech that's obviously meant to get in fairly close and mix it up with that Autocannon 20. But I mean, yeah, I guess they had to skimp on weight somewhere to fit all those awesome weapons on it. So yes, the 3S is a really good version of the Goliath. I like this one a lot. The next version of the Goliath is another Civil War version, and this is my favorite. We have made it to my favorite version of the Goliath. This is the GOL-4S. Now, the GOL-4S, in my opinion, is the version of the Goliath that made me want to own a Goliath. And I do own one now. This is the one, I mentioned it in the Scorpion video. This one is absolutely fantastic. So we have a center torso armor of 37, side torsos of 25, all 4 legs at 33. Rear center torso at 12, the sides at 8, so not quite as good as some of the other versions on the rear, but fairly good armor on the rest of it. It's got 10 double heat sinks, so 20 points of heat sinking capacity, so it's really not going to need that, though. It can fire everything it's got and really not overheat. And what does it have? Well, its main weapon is that beautiful, beautiful Civil War era weapon, the reason to play Civil War, the heavy Gauss rifle. And it's backed up by 2 ER medium lasers and an LRM-10. This thing is fantastic. So the heavy Gauss rifle, for those not familiar, for those of you who do not play Civil War era, this thing is brutal. So you've got a max range of 20. It gets down to medium range at 13 and short range at 6. It does have a minimum range of 4. And it has variable damage. Now, long range is not very impressive. It does about 10 damage at long range. However, at medium range, it starts doing 20 damage. At 13 hexes away, you start doing 20 damage. If you can hit someone at short range, it does 25 damage in a single spot. Big holes. It will punch big holes in enemy mechs. Now, the one big disadvantage for a heavy Gauss rifle on your mech is, of course, every time you fire it, the huge recoil makes you take a piloting skill roll to stay standing. But of course, you're in a quad. Quad mechs get -2 difficulty to their piloting skill rolls to stay standing. That includes with the heavy Gauss rifle. This is a marvelous platform for a heavy Gauss rifle. That is why I love this version of the Goliath best. Heavy Gauss rifles are great, and I love mechs with heavy Gauss rifles, but there are very few heavy Gauss rifles on quads, and I think there should be more. A lot of times they put heavy Gauss rifles on biped mechs, and you know what? They're just not the best platform for it. You really need it on a quad, so that's why I love this version of the Goliath. Plus, once you punch the hole, again, those 2 ER medium lasers plus the LRM-10 are really great at then finding those holes to get those crits. Really fantastic mech. Now, next one I'm going to talk about here is the Goliath GOL-5D. This is another Civil War era version, and this is another really cool version of the Goliath. This is one I actually quite like. So this version of the Goliath, again, is a 4-6 movement. We've got 38 armor on the center torso, 26 on each side torso, full 9 on the head, 34 for each leg. We have 12 on the center rear and 8 on each side. Now, this version has 12 double heat sinks for 24 heat sinking capacity. And this version will actually need the extra heat sinking capacity. What is it armed with? Well, it has a whopping 4 ER medium lasers, 2 machine guns, but then it has a targeting computer and a rotary autocannon 5. I would love actually to one day figure out and make a couple of lances, maybe for playing against the clan, where I use 2 Goliaths, one of the 4S to punch a big hole with its heavy Gauss rifle, and one of the 5D, so that all of those shots with the rotary autocannon 5 can find that hole. This is a really good version. I like this version of the Goliath a lot. If you already have other mechs in your lance that are going to punch big holes, this is a great one to find those holes. I find the rotary autocannon 5 combined with the 4 ER medium lasers and the targeting computer to be significantly better than, a mech even with 2 LRM-15s for finding those holes. You have a better chance of getting more hits, in my opinion, with this loadout of weaponry. Really, really awesome version. The next version is the 5W. This is a Jihad era version. This one is very similar to a lot of the others. It's got the 4-6 movement. We've got 34 armor on all the legs, 26 on the side torsos, 38 on the center torso, full 9 on the head, 12 on the center rear, 8 on the sides. We've got 15 double heat sinks, and it's going to need it because this one comes with 2 plasma rifles for those that, making people have heat spike, 3 medium lasers, a Guardian ECM suite, and an improved C3 CPU. So this is your Goliath for an improved C3 network plus to cause heat spikes. This is a really cool version. I do like this one, though it does pale, in my opinion, compared to my favorites. The next version is the 6H. This is another Jihad era version. Again, very similar to a lot of versions, though we do drop the armor significantly back down to fit a lot of equipment on this one. Only 20 armor on each side torso, 30 on the center, the full 9 on the head, 29 on each leg. That's a little disappointing. 19 on the center rear torso, so we get that rear armor back up, and 13 on each side. This one comes with 12 double heat sinks, and it's got a heavy PPC, 3 light machine guns with a light machine gun array, an LRM-10, 3 light machine guns with a light machine gun array, a second LRM-10, and 4 B-pods. So, yeah, this one is okay. For the Jihad era, it's really not that great. The heavy PPC is really nice. I like weapons that do 15 or more damage. You can head cap with them, but this is one I wouldn't use too much. There's actually better Jihad era versions. And then we finally have the 6M, which is a Dark Age experimental tech version. This one's got 24 armor on the 2 front legs, while 30 on the rear, 30 on the center torso, 20 on the side torsos, 19 on the center rear torso, and 13 on the 2 side torsos in the rear. So this one is actually pretty well defended. It's got 2 multi-missile launcher 7s, a Gauss rifle. It's got a turret, which with the advanced rules, allows you to actually kind of do a torso twist, which is really awesome, takes care of one of its disadvantages. It has an ER medium laser, a small VSP laser, and then in the rear it has another ER medium laser and another small VSP laser with 10 double heat sinks. This one will get a bit hot, but this is actually a really cool version if you're playing advanced tech. So there you go. Those are all of the versions of the Goliath. Now, my favorite version, of course, is the 4S. So for my custom version, I decided I was going to do a custom version of the 4S. So this is a custom redesign, designed by my own personal mech design team, KIWF, named after the last initial of its 4 founding members, but affectionately nicknamed Kill It With Fire by its fans. This is the Goliath GOL 4S KIWF, and I had a very specific goal with this one. So as I said, I love the Goliath for a heavy Gauss rifle platform, even though it's only one version of the Goliath that has that. And I wanted to know, could I get 2 heavy Gauss rifles on the 80-ton Goliath chassis? And the answer was yes, but it took a lot of finagling. It was not easy. So I had to take off the, to make both room and weight, I had to take off the case systems on the right and left torso. I also had to take off every weapon other than the already existing heavy Gauss rifle. I also had to slow it down. I had to give it a smaller size engine, so it has a walking speed of 3 and a running of 5. This could be a bit of an issue, but it was necessary to be able to fit both heavy Gauss rifles on it. I also had to remove the double heat sinks and knock them down to 10 single heat sinks. This was for space purposes, because with the smaller engine, I actually couldn't fit all 10 of those heat sinks in the engine, so I didn't want to have to take up 3 spaces out there in one particular body part with that double heatsink. So we've got 2 heavy Gauss rifles, and we actually have a fair amount of Gauss rifle ammo. We put 1 ton of heavy Gauss rifle ammo in the left rear leg, 1 ton in the right rear leg, 1 ton in the left front leg, 1 ton in the right front leg, and 1 ton in the head, for a total of 20 shots, which means even if the game went for 10 turns, you could fire every turn with both heavy Gauss rifles. This thing is, and I admit it, a bit of a one-trick pony. This is a beast of a mech that no one wants to get close to, and unfortunately is no longer fast enough to really keep a fairly good distance with those heavy Gauss rifles. But if you can trick someone into getting close to you and then unload on them with the 2 heavy Gauss rifles, you're going to rip them in half in a turn. It's brutal, and you want to have one mech with backup that has a lot of, you know, little cluster weapons or little medium lasers to find those holes that you tore in case you were shooting at another assault mech, something that could actually take those hits and not instantly die. But yeah, this is a fun redesign. I enjoyed working on this one. Again, I had a very specific goal going into this. I wanted a version of the Goliath with 2 heavy Gauss rifles, and in that regard, I succeeded. That said, I still like the regular 4S better than my own redesign, because I like its grouping of weapons quite a lot, and also I like how it's able to be a bit faster and a bit more maneuverable to get its single heavy Gauss rifle really into that optimal range to be able to hit somebody. 4.6 is significantly better than 3.5. I know what you're saying. You're like, that's only 1 more hex. But here's the thing. So if you are running 6 versus 5, that one extra movement could be that make it or break it to get into a forest. When you are walking 4 versus 3, you could still move 3 hexes and do a single turn, or move 3 hexes that gets you into a forest to get a +2 difficulty, 1 for the moving 3 and 1 for the forest to hit you back. It can actually make a huge difference upgrading from 3.5 to 4.6, which is why I do still like this cannon version of the Goliath better. So what mech warrior would I put into the Goliath Gol 4S with its heavy Gauss rifle, its LRM-10, and its 2 ER medium lasers? Well, I'm going to put in Roger Biernsbacher. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Now, Roger Biernsbacher normally is in a Lancelot. He is a gunnery skill 2, piloting skill 2, so this is a huge boost to your Goliath's abilities. That piloting skill 2 combined with the fact that it is a quad means until it takes damage to its legs, it's almost not possible for this thing to fall down. He is a 3-cost mech warrior, and he has 2 abilities that I think work really well for the Goliath. The abilities are Human TRO, which says add a +1 modifier when rolling on the determining critical hits table, with those huge 25 or 20 damage hits from the heavy Gauss rifle, depending on range. You are going to be likely to get to roll on the critical hits table. Getting to get a +1 for your roll on the critical hits table could be make or break. It could help you bring down those enemy assault mechs. And in addition, he has Marksman. Now this is awesome. So for Marksman, it says may make a special aimed shot attack as if using a targeting computer, and may only fire 1 weapon, or if they already have a targeting computer, you could get an extra -2 to the difficulty modifier. So obviously you're going to fire with just the heavy Gauss rifle for a turn when you want to make that targeted shot. You basically want to aim for a shot that, let's say, someone has already peeled off a good amount of the armor on the enemy center torso. You want to aim for that center torso and blow right through it with 25 damage. This can be a fantastically useful ability. I think this is going to be a great mech warrior to put on the Gol 4S. So now, for the Lance I've created for the Gol 4S, using the Lance abilities from the Clan Invasion box set, I am going to be making a Command Lance. So now the requirements for Command Lance are as follows. At least 1 unit in this formation must be designated as the command unit. That will not be my Goliath, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. It's because the other ability of the Command Lance, it actually has 2 other abilities, but one of the other abilities, which is really awesome, we're going to want to give to the Goliath, and you can't give it to the mech that is the command mech. So it will not be the command mech for this formation. Now, 50% of the units must have one of the following unit roles: Sniper, Missile Bolt, Skirmisher, or Juggernaut. I have a Missile Boat and a Juggernaut, so that is fulfilled. And then 1 additional unit in the star must be a Brawler, Striker, or Scout. That is fulfilled by the Goliath, who is a Brawler. This version of the Goliath is considered a Brawler. Now, the abilities go as follows. Prior to the beginning of play, 2 of the non-command units, this is the important bit, in this formation receive the Combat Intuition ability. In addition, if a force possesses a Command Lance and the command unit is not destroyed, its controlling player may re-roll initiative rolls once per turn. However, the second roll stands even if it was worse than the first. So, okay. Now, the ability that it was referencing there that you can assign to 2 of your units is Combat Intuition. Now, I want to give this to my Goliath, and I'm also going to have a Hunchback in here. I'm going to give it to the Hunchback as well. That you have to decide at the end of one of your turns that for the next turn you're going to use the ability and choose one of these options, that after the initiative is rolled, either in the movement phase of the following turn, the Combat Intuitive unit may take all of its movement, weapon attack, and physical attack actions at once in that order at any point before its target is activated for movement, including before any other opposing units have moved. The target will not have their movement modifiers, but is not considered immobile. Any damage inflicted by the Combat Intuitive unit takes effect immediately, and then of course it's not going to get to move, it counts its own movement. The other of the 2 abilities is the unit may move after all other friendly and opposing units has moved, so it can see where they go before doing its move, and then of course do its declaring of weapons and weapon attacks as normal. Now, the first one is the one I really like because, okay, so you're on a flank with your Goliath, say, and your opponent is coming at you with a super fast mech. They're trying to zip around you, and they get fairly close and they shoot at you. At the end of that turn, you say, okay, I'm going to use Combat Intuition next turn. So next turn, suddenly that like +4, +5 difficulty to hit doesn't count because they haven't moved this turn yet. Instead, you just walk up and you fire with everything. And you're going to be incredibly likely to hit with everything. And if you can get the 25 damage with the heavy Gauss rifle, a light, fast scout mech, you could eliminate it in one turn for one use of Combat Intuition. On the other hand, if you're trying to gang up on a bigger mech, a heavy or an assault mech, similarly, you could go in and punch a hole in it and then rely on your other mechs to go in and try to find that hole. But again, be very likely to connect. And also you can combine the abilities of the mech warrior that I put into the Goliath. For instance, Marksman, for if that mech already has a hole, to go in for the kill, to move before it moves. It will not get any extra difficulty modifiers, and it won't have a chance to duck behind a hill or go into a forest, and you run up and you aim right for that spot that already has a hole in it, and you can maybe blow that mech in half and kill it before it even gets to act, because it takes effect immediately. Having this mech warrior with Marksman along with Combat Intuition, because of it being a command lance on the Goliath 4S, I think is freaking awesome. So what else do we have to fill out this lance? So for the command unit in the lance, I've decided to take the longbow Lb20x. Now this lance is a 6,000 battle value Civil War era lance. This is a Civil War era version of the longbow to complement my Civil War era version of the Goliath. Now, this is not one that really needs to use that ability, which is why I wanted to give it make it the command unit. Plus, this is a mech that you can hide way back on your side of the field, even behind a hill or something, so your opponents can't hit it, so they can't stop you from getting your re-rolls on initiative, which could be very key, very important, because most of its armament is LRMs and they can use it indirect fire. This thing is a 3-5 movement mech. Decent armor for a longbow, still not great. It's got 25 on each side torso, 35 in the center torso, 20 in the arms, 20 on the legs. The rear armor is only 10 and 8. But its armament is insane. It's got 2 LRM-20s with Artemis 4s, 2 LRM-15s with Artemis 4s, and 3 ER small lasers. So park this thing behind a hill, use it as your command unit, and after you punch holes with that heavy Gauss rifle, find the holes again for the crits with your longbow 12C. Next, we have a mech to tag team with the Goliath and its heavy Gauss. We have the Hunchback Hbk6n. This is a clan invasion era version of the Hunchback. It's basically a clan invasion era technology upgrade of the original Hunchback. It's got 10 double heat sinks. It's 4-6 movement. It's a 50-ton mech with an autocannon, 22 medium lasers, and a small pulse laser. This is a really good version of the Hunchback because it fixes one of the few issues the older Hunchback had, which was with heat. And it's actually a fairly affordable platform and fairly maneuverable platform for an autocannon. 20 makes a good tag team partner for the Goliath because at the 4-6 movement, it can keep up with it. And if you got the two of them together, people are going to really be trying to redeploy and reposition to stay away from those big guns. And again, this is going to be your second mech that you're going to use with Combat Intuition, because sometimes you're going to want to run in and blast away with that autocannon 20 to drop a small mech or hit a assault mech with both your Hunchback and then maybe a aim shot with the Goliath, because again of its ability on its mech warrior to hit it in the same spot that the autocannon 20 on the Hunchback hit it in, before that mech even gets to move, and you could do that to drop an assault mech doing 45 damage in the same spot if successful. Now the final mech is another mech to run up close to keep your enemies away from your command mech. You do not want them coming in and hitting your longbow. So this is another mech to run up close with the Hunchback and the Goliath, also making it very difficult for your opponents to just sort of run away and do what they want, because if all three of your close range mechs are close to each other, most of your points are tied up in one area of the board. They're gonna have to deal with them. And that is the Civil War version of the Phoenix Hawk, the Phoenix Hawk PXH3PL. That is Papa X-Ray Hotel -3 Papa Lima. This version of the Phoenix Hawk is a 696 quite maneuverable for a medium mech, for a 45-ton mech. It's got 19 armor on the center torso, 16 on the side torsos, 13 on the arms, and 21 on the legs. 5 on each side rear torso, and 6 on the center rear torso. The armor is not great, but it's high speed and maneuverability and 6 jumping capabilities, so it can jump from forest to forest. Can be really good for keeping this thing alive. It's got 12 double heat sinks, so it can really absorb the heat from its weapons. And for its weapons, it has 1 large pulse laser, 2 medium pulse lasers, 2 ER small lasers, and a targeting computer. So again, you have a second mech that can target and really aim in and hit those holes with these bunch of small arms, the holes that were made by the Autocannon 20 and the heavy Gauss rifle. I think this is a very fun lance to play in the Civil War era. 3 out of 4 of the mechs are actually Civil War era mechs. The only one not being a Civil War era mech is the Hunchback. But of course, you know, he's an older design that you could still have, because that's Battletech. I think this would be a real fun lance to play. You have big guns, you have lots of clusters and smaller weapons to then find the holes. You have targeting, you have re-rolling of initiative rolls, and of course you have combat intuition. This could be quite a deadly lance, and I would actually absolutely love to take this lance to a clan invasion game. In fact, I would put money on this lance because of all its extra abilities over an enemy lance without as many extra abilities, but more guns. Like, I think this lance could easily gang up on and drop an Atlas, something much bigger than any mech in this lance, because of its ability to target, because of its ability to win initiative, because of the combined arms and combined abilities of this lance. But tell me what you think down below. Tell me, what is your favorite version of the Goliath? Is there a different version that I kind of panned that you're a big fan of? Let me know about it. Also, if you have any requests for future episodes of Grokking Battletech, any other mechs you would like me to cover, I'm trying to cover all of the mechs from the earlier time period, so anything from Star League on up through Civil War before I move on into the later time periods. But if you have any requests for any mechs from those time periods, feel free to comment them down below. And if you enjoyed this episode of Grokking Battletech and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.